recording.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock, so I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Park Committee. This is Wednesday, March 28th, 2018, 4 p.m. We have President Alderman John Vandeleest, Alderman Andy Nicholson, and myself, Alderman David Nennig. We are expecting Alderman Chris Weary shortly. So the first thing is approval of the minutes of our meeting, March 14th. Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Vandeleest to approve the minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of the agenda. There was an addition, number 7, which is on the packet that members have in front of them. Are there any other additions or corrections?
No, this is final.
Okay. Any discussion by the committee? Otherwise, we'll take a motion.
So moved.
By Alderman Nicholson, second by Alderman Vandeleest to approve the agenda, the amended agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, first item is consideration with possible action on the request by Alderman Weary to install a connector walk between the West Side Trail and dead end of San Jose Place. Dan, do you want to give us a report?
Sure, so if you take a look at the packet of information you have, I supplied you 2 maps. One is a site map showing the general area, and then the second one is a more detailed map for our discussion. So this request was brought forward by Alderman Weary at the last City Council meeting. We did discuss this request with Public Works, and what we would propose, if it's approved, is to install a 6-foot wide paved connector walk, and that would be adequate because there aren't going to be a lot of people using this walkway other than the neighborhood. The installation of this walk would also include installing a curb cut where the proposed walk meets San Jose cul-de-sac, and then there's an existing chain link fence that separates the cul-de-sac from the trail. We would have to provide an opening in the chain link fence to accommodate the trail as part of this cost. The total cost to do all of that would be approximately $4,000. The Parks Department does have enough funding in our park bond paving account that we could have this walk installed later this year if that's the desire of the committee and the council. One thing I did want to point out, if you take a look at this detailed map here, you will see that my estimate does not include installing a sidewalk around the cul-de-sac. So there's currently a sidewalk that ends at this house. There's a sidewalk that ends at this house, but it doesn't go all the way around. If the desire is to connect this walk to those cul-de-sac walks, then technically the property owners of the adjacent property would be responsible to fund the construction costs. In addition, the 2 property owners would be responsible to shovel those walks in the winter. So if the desire is to actually put a sidewalk around that whole perimeter, we have to have some discussions with the property owners to make sure that they're in agreement with it. Now, the city council could waive the fee for the cost of that walk and pay for it out of a park account or a bond account, but the city would not take on the management to keep it shoveled in the winter. That would still fall on the property owner. So our request or our recommendation is just to install the connector walk as shown on this map without the cul-de-sac walks. Those could always be added at a later date.
So moved.
Okay. Do you know if Alderman Weary wanted the sidewalk or not?
Yes, he was in support of it. I did have a conversation of it.
The connector walk, not necessarily the sidewalk.
I did not talk to Alderman Weary about the cul-de-sac portion of it.
Okay. I wonder if we should wait until he gets here?
We can put it back, take it up at another, when he gets back here.
It could be discussed at council too if
Okay.
the desire is to add it back in. But truthfully,
I like that idea.
I don't know if the Parks Department has enough funding to do the paving of the cul-de-sac anyway. So it would fall on the property owners or it have to be done at a later date.
Okay. Well, should we approve the connector walk at this point, and then if he wants to discuss the cul-de-sac sidewalk, we can talk about that later?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So moved.
So we have a motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Vandeleest to proceed with the connector walk at a cost of approximately $4,000 to be funded with the existing bond paving account. Correct?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Second, consideration of possible action on 2018 Green Bay Bullfrogs event schedule. Again, that is in our packet. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So basically, I have several sheets. The first sheet summarizes their special events that are proposed for the entire year. And then there is a proposal for another special event that they've never done before for a movie night. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. So we do have members from the Bullfrog group here if you want to ask questions after my presentation here.
Okay.
So, we are unveiling their schedule, and we're seeking approval for all of these promotional nights as listed on this calendar here, along with all of their special event requests. So each year, we do bring this forward to the Park Committee and City Council for review, just to make sure that there's no concerns from the neighborhood of what's being done for these events. The proposal of what you see here is actually very similar to last year's events, so there isn't much of a change. But we do want to highlight just a few events because in order to approve them, we will have to suspend a few of the city ordinance if these events are approved. So the first one will be on June 23rd. There's a Boy Scout campout that would take place as part of the Area Scout Appreciation Night. It's anticipated that 50 to 100 scouts, along with their guardians, would have the opportunity to enjoy a free campout night. A movie would be playing in center field and would be directed away from the neighboring houses so that noise would not become a nuisance. The movie would be the first activity of the night also to try and get it done so that it doesn't happen too late in the evening. So this event would need approval to suspend the overnight camping ordinance in order to allow overnight camping in the city park. The second event that would need some modifications to the ordinance is on June 27th, there's a Bark in the Park night. So that would require that the Parks Committee and City Council temporarily suspend the ordinance to allow dogs in the stadium, but they still will be required to be on a leash, so they're not going to just be running around. The Bullfrogs would be responsible to handle all proper permits, insurance, proof of vaccinations, and licenses being obtained for each dog entering the stadium. So the ordinance that you would have to temporarily suspend would be ordinance 25.04-9, dogs in the park, to allow dogs in the facility for that event. Both of those events were done in the past and approvals were given previously. Also, as in previous years, the Bullfrogs would like to use inflatables again this year. Risk management has approved this in the past, and so there really hasn't been too much of a concern with it in the past, and it's actually run fairly smoothly. So the only new event is the one that I showed you. There's a proposal in your packet, and that's for a new outdoor movie night at Joanne Stadium on June 6th. So what's being proposed is the gates would open at 6 and the movie would start at 7. This event would end around 9:15 p.m. Because this is a new event and hasn't been done before, this will have to go before the Special Events Committee for final approval. So you can approve this event tonight, but it would be contingent upon approval of the Special Events Committee. And I know that they've already had previous discussions with them, and there really aren't too many concerns with that event. So I think we're satisfied, but it does have to go through the other committee. Our department did meet with risk management, the city attorney's office, and other city departments to ensure that all of these promotional nights are approved per city policy and ordinance, as well as making sure the nights are covered under the Green Bay Bullfrogs insurance and looking into the permits and special event requirements also. So internally, we reviewed all of these and we really don't have any issues or problems. We would like to thank the Bullfrogs for the time that they've spent in Green Bay and the time at the stadium. I know that they've been a great asset to Green Bay as a whole, and we still have one more season with them. So when we're ready, I have a motion here with a list of contingencies, but I don't know if you want to.
So moved.
Okay, why don't you read the motion
Okay.
again that you're recommending?
To approve the Bullfrog schedule of events for the 2018 season, allowing Boy Scout campout at Joanne Stadium on June 23rd, and to allow dogs to be in Joanne Stadium on June 27th for the Bark in the Park event, contingent upon the following. All proper permits and insurances being obtained. Final special event approval from the Special Events Committee. Must adhere to all noise ordinances and regulations. The Park Committee and City Council suspending ordinances to allow overnight camping in the park on June 23rd for the Boy Scout camp. Bullfrogs being responsible for requesting proof of vaccinations and licenses for each dog entering Joanne Stadium for the Bark in the Park event. And then finally, the Parks Committee and City Council suspending ordinance 25.04-9 to allow dogs in the stadium, but still require dogs to be on a leash for the June 27th Bark in the Park event. So it's a long motion with a lot of contingencies, but it's similar to previous motions.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Nicholson, second by Alderman Vandelis to approve. Is there anything you'd like to add before we vote on it?
Just that we're looking forward to the season and really appreciate all the time.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would echo Dan's comment that, it looks like you have a great list of activities for, I guess, the final year in Green Bay, and, we hope that people will turn out and enjoy the events, so thank you very much. Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as indicated. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
I saw Chainsaw Juggler.
Yeah, he might be coming.
All right. Cool.
Not going to be the Schwaben Bullfrogs.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Okay. Number 3, consideration with possible action on the request by the Green Bay Public Arts Commission to install up to 4 rotating art sculptures on the Main Street green space located near the intersection of Main and Newhall. Dan?
So you do have a map in your packet here which shows the city-owned property highlighted, and then shows the 4 proposed locations. So the Green Bay Public Arts Commission contacted staff and requested to install up to 4 of these art sculptures in the park. Now, as I mentioned, this is a park owned and maintained property, and it's near the intersection of Main Street and Newhall Street. Several of these rotating art sculptures have already been previously approved in other parks throughout the city and other locations. So this isn't really any different than the other proposals that have been brought forward. So if we do approve this, the Arts Commission would fund the installation of 4 5-by-5-foot concrete footings to accommodate the sculptures. The commission would then be in charge of hiring artists to select art pieces for each of the 4 locations. And then because this is a rotating art sculpture process, periodically the art pieces would be switched out with new pieces. I think initially they were looking at a yearly rotation. Initially they would start with only 1 sculpture in this location and then phase in the other 3 over time if it's a success and they decide to add more. So all costs would be the responsibility of the Green Bay Public Arts Commission. We do have a city staff member here who's part of the Art Commission if you want to hear from her.
Yeah. Well, it is in my district, and this is a remnant piece of property that we had left over, the city had left over from when Main Street was widened years ago. And to me, it seems like a good use of the property.
So moved.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Weary to,
I would just request that you make it contingent upon all costs for the installation and maintenance at the responsibility of the Green Bay Public Arts Commission.
okay. I just had one question myself. Does the park department mow that, or who mows?
Yes, the park department owns that area.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the request as indicated. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for supporting public art.
Good. Okay, number 4, consideration with possible action on a request by Wisconsin Public Service for a utility easement at the Wildlife Sanctuary adjacent to Dan's Avenue for the purpose of installing a gas regulator station. Pass that out.
Okay, so you'll see 2 maps that I provided in your packet. The first one is a site map showing the general area of the proposed easement. The second map is a more detailed location with an aerial photo behind it so you can see what's going on. What I did just hand out is a third map which kind of shows the layout of where the proposed building would go in relation to the easement. So Wisconsin Public Service contacted us and asked for this utility easement for the purpose of installing a gas regulator station. So what they're recommending is a 50 by 100 foot easement directly adjacent to an existing American transmission station easement that you can see in the air photo. This proposed easement would be fenced off from the public, and a small 12-foot by 15-foot shed would be installed in the center of the easement, and that is where the gas regulator equipment would be housed. Currently, if you see in the air photo, the area is mainly an open field with a few trees. The trees would have to be removed by WPS if the easement is approved. The two easements would be then separated by basically a gravel access easement, which is currently in place. And if you look at this site plan, you'll see that this area is shown right here with two gates. So those two gates would be necessary so that both ATC and city staff could get to our property on the other side of the easements. So we would require that we have keys to those gates, so we don't have to call them every time we need to open it and cut through the property. Typically, when these utility easements come forward, we only require a nominal fee of a few dollars and grant the easement to the utility companies. We like to work with them whenever possible because it's a savings to the taxpayers. You know, they don't see that hit on their bills. So this proposed easement, though, is a little bit different. With the typical easements that we provide, they're not fenced off. And the public can still, usually they're buried utilities, but the public can still walk on the property and enjoy the property. But in this case, it's fenced off and not accessible to the public. In addition, this is a wildlife sanctuary, and we are losing some natural habitat as part of this proposal. So therefore, staff is recommending that WPS pay fair market value for this easement. We did contact the city's assessor's office, and they recommended a value of $1.50 per square foot for the use of this easement. So since the easement is 50 by 100, that's a 5,000 square foot property, so we're looking at a total cost of $7,500. Staff did propose that to WPS, and they are acceptable to this. So if this is approved, the city would get a check from them for $7,500, which we would recommend goes back to the sanctuary for them to use for some amenity out there to make up for the loss of the natural areas that they're losing. We do have somebody from WPS here if you have any specific questions in regards to this easement. I do want to point out that a few days ago, WPS did contact me, and they indicated that they may come back with another request to do a utility easement up along Dan's Avenue. I haven't seen any formal proposal on that, so we're not approving that or discussing that tonight. Whether or not we approve that is kind of independent of this gas regulator station. So they could install it without the other easement, but it'll just be more difficult for them is what I'm being told. So, but we do have somebody here if you have other questions.
Are there any questions by the committee?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Weary, second by Alderman Vandelis to approve the easement with the terms that Dan outlined, right?
Yeah, it's, the only term would be to approve the easement and to approve the purchase price of $7,500 for the easement.
Okay. Andy?
I got a question, but it's not related. Will you give me the leniency, Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Is it
It'll be real quick.
of the person in the audience?
Right, whoever
Okay,
you-
so let's
WPS is.
suspend the rules to hear from interested parties.
Move.
Motion by Alderman Weary, second by Alderman Nicholson to suspend the rules to hear from interested parties. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Would you come forward, please? Give us your name and address for the record, and then if you have anything to add on this, we'd be happy to hear it. Alderman Nicholson had a
The
question.
question I have is, and it's not related, I have a neighbor with a tree over wires. Can you get me a contact and a number, please?
I can, yes, if you provide me your information, I can follow up with you on that. I do work
Perfect.
on the natural gas side, so I'm not as involved with the line clearing and things things of that nature.
Like a
but-
contact,
Sure.
if you could help me. Okay, I'll get you my number then, is that okay?
Yep. that's
All right,
fine.
thanks, Mr.
And my name
Chairman.
is Dina Andre, natural gas engineer.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to add on it?
I think the only thing, if you guys want to kind of know the justification behind the project, it might be of interest to you guys. So WPS has a 150 PSI gas system around the city of Green Bay. And we have different sources off of that line to feed the natural gas customers in the city. So what we're proposing to install is one of those sources. So this summer, we plan to retire 2 sources and install 1. So we're trying to consolidate the source of gas into the gas system, so.
What 2 are you retiring?
So there's one off of, thank you very much, August Street and Lime Kiln. And those are underground vaults. That's a set of vaults we plan to retire. And then there's one up along St. Anthony Drive. And it's kind of in a residential area, so we could have rebuilt it there, but it's pretty residential and we'd have to expand the footprint because we don't have enough capacity through that station. So this is kind of helping us to consolidate a little bit, so.
Looks like a good location. I don't see any issues with it.
Okay.
So thank you very
Yep,
much.
and I'll pass you the information.
Thank you.
Okay.
Motion to
Thank you very
receive, return to regular order
Okay,
business.
we have motion by Alderman Nicholson, second by Alderman Weary to return to the regular order of business. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so I
So
think we have,
moved.
I think we have a
Motion to
on the
approve.
floor by Alderman Nicholson, second by Alderman Weary to approve with the fair market value of $7,500. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. You're all okay. Number 5 is consideration with possible action on the approval to submit a grant application for the 2018 Wisconsin RPC and DNR Great Lakes Basin Tree Planting Grant Program. Dan?
Sure. So staff is requesting approval to apply for this tree planting grant application. This grant is sponsored by the Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. That's who's funding it. So funded projects will focus on planting trees to mitigate the impact of the emerald ash borer and also reduce runoff in urban communities. Awards range anywhere from $1,000 to $20,000 and do require a 25% match. In-kind costs can include the staff cost to do the planting, so it doesn't have to be a cash match for that 25%. The application is due on April 9th, and projects can begin upon notification on May 1st. Per this grant stipulations, the funding must be, or the planting must be done by December 30th of this year. So it's a very quick timeline to award the grants and then purchase the trees and get them planted. The grant will fund the purchase price and installation costs for larger trees, and the trees have to be anywhere from 1 inch to 2.5 inch caliber size trees. So they don't want you to plant smaller trees. They're trying to get a bigger impact in the urban environment. So our grant request is for $15,000 to purchase and plant 125 trees in various areas throughout the city park system. I did submit to you kind of a 2-page summary of what we're proposing to do and the locations where the trees would be planted throughout the park system. And then our proposed 25% match, which would be valued at $5,000, would come from the labor for the forestry crews or volunteers to plant these trees. So some of these trees are being proposed to be planted in the Bear Creek Greenway, so those would likely be done with volunteers. Sponsored through the Bear Creek Preservation Foundation. All of the other trees would be done by forestry crews. So per city policy, we are required to get approval from the Park Committee and City Council anytime we apply for a grant application. And then if the grant is awarded, we have to bring it back to the Park Committee and City Council to get approval to accept the grant. So
moved.
Okay. A motion by Alderman Nicholson, second by Alderman Weary to approve the grant application. I don't see any downside to it, so is there any discussion?
I was going to say, I like the Pinus strobus and the Syringa reticulata and the Catalpa speciosa.
yes,
I have no idea what it
those
is.
are my favorites too.
Okay, well, we'll plant them where appropriate, so. Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. Okay, motion carries. Number 6, report of purchasing manager. Rick?
I have two items on the agenda tonight. The first item is a single source request to purchase Gold Bond concessions equipment for Bay Beach for the new concession area through Badger Popcorn. The equipment that's being purchased is like the equipment that we already have, that the staff is familiar with using, that has been very reliable. The only dealer authorized for this part of the state is Badger Popcorn. So I've attached a list to the purchasing report of the equipment that we're purchasing. I believe it's 10 items. Popcorn machine, warmer, cotton candy, snow cones, bag cheese warmers. So the total cost of that purchase is $30,249.
Okay, are there any questions?
Move to approve.
Okay,
So
we have a
moved.
Motion by Alderman Weary, second by Alderman Vanderleest to approve 6A, the concession equipment. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. Second one is consideration of possible action on the purchase of an ice cream machine for Bay Beach.
Well, this request, the quotes were opened on Monday. That's why I'm bringing the results to the meeting today. We did an RFQ to purchase a ice cream machine. We received 5 responses, and the number 1 response had a condition. It's a lightly used machine, but it is the machine that meets all the specifications. And so our recommendation is to make this award to Bilter for $9,585 on the condition the vendor has agreed to deliver the machine to Bay Beach. It'll be inspected by Bay Beach staff to make sure that that it is in pristine order, which we've talked to the manufacturer, and that's what they expect. But if for some reason that machine doesn't pass inspection, then we'll return it at the dealer's expense, and we'll move on and purchase a machine from the next lowest responsive bidder. And that'll be in the $14,000 range.
Well, the note says that it was only in service for 3 days, so it's probably in very good shape.
Yeah, it was shipped to, I'm not sure where, it was in state, but they believed they could use it also to make custard, and as it turned out, it couldn't.
Oh,
And so that's why it was in use for a very short amount of time.
okay. So do you want us to specify in the motion that if it's not, if it doesn't meet the needs, that the second vendor would, or do you want us to just do the first?
No, I want the motion to have that contingency on it. And let me explain. You see vendor number 2 here?
Yes.
They're technically the next lowest vendor, but we've talked to Jason, and that vendor has only offered a 500 trade-in allowance on a piece of equipment that we currently have. And Jason believes that that equipment has more value than that. So if vendor 1 doesn't come through, we'll actually move on to vendor 3 as being the second lowest responsible bidder. And we'll pay it at $14,082, and then we will sell that used machine on our public surplus network. So I think the wording in the recommendation there, Dan, as far as the motion might be most appropriate.
Okay. Okay, so the recommendation at the bottom is to award the lowest responsible vendor, Bolter LLC, for $9,585 pending inspection and approval prior to purchase. If the machine from Bolter is determined to be unacceptable after inspection, the award will be given to the next lowest responsible bidder. which is Taylor Enterprise of Wisconsin.
Well, at this point, yes.
Right?
But I would prefer not to put Taylor, I'd like to
okay.
leave it at responsible.
Okay.
Because what we'll really do is start negotiating maybe with both vendors at that point.
Okay.
Okay, all,
Is there a
so
motion?
moved, right here.
Motion by Alderman Nicholson, second by Alderman Weary to
Leader ice cream.
adopt that recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you
Hopefully
very
that
much, Rick.
First one will work out because it's about
Yeah.
$4,500
Pretty good.
paper.
You bet. Let's get it in before the weather gets too warm, so, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
4 months.
Number 7 was added to the agenda. It's consideration with possible action on the First Amendment to the agreement to lease personal property between the city and Friends of Bay Beach for the Ferris wheel donation. Do you want to run us through what's in our packet?
Yeah,
now?
so it's in your packet. I have two different agreements here. The first one is the amended agreement, and I highlighted just kind of the main points. There's a few other changes in here, but these are the key points that I highlighted. And then the second agreement is the original one that was signed, when was it signed? In September of 2017. So you can see the difference between the two agreements. And basically, I'll kind of go over the reason why this was added, and a lot of it had to do with the bonding request that went forward to the Finance Committee. So I'll give you the history behind it here. So at the July 12th, 2017 Park Committee, the city did approve the donation of a large Ferris wheel from the Friends of Bay Beach. The approved motion outlined the following contingencies as part of the donation. So these contingencies were in the motion, and I'll read them to you. So no Bay Beach revenues will be pledged to or borrowed against for the next 5 years from 2018 to 2022. The second one was the funding for the beach, pier, boardwalk, and bathhouse will come from sources outside of Bay Beach revenue if started prior to 2022. The third contingency was there will be no borrowing or leveraging of Bay Beach's revenues through 2022 as the current revenue needs to be reinvested into the park. So after this motion was made and these contingencies were approved by the Park Committee and City Council, the City Attorney's Office worked with the Friends of Bay Beach to draft this first agreement, which basically has a lot of information on here, but it basically summarizes the terms of the conditions that were approved. What was discussed at the Finance Committee last night was to change how we're proceeding with the project and how our funding mechanism is going to work for the beach proposal. So as we discussed at the previous Park Committee, we are pretty close to receiving the DNR permits, which would allow us to build the beach, pier, boardwalk, and bathhouse. Now, the DNR has told me that we'll know by the end of the day tomorrow, so that's how close we are to this. So it is anticipated that the permits will be awarded tomorrow. Because we're so close to getting the permits, staff did request at a previous Park Committee that the city fund the construction of the beach, pier, and boardwalk. So this was brought forward on March 28th, and at the time, staff recommended that the city bond $3 million for the project, and then the city would then secure $1 million in fundraising and $1 million in grants to make it a $5 million project. Per this agreement that you saw in front of you, staff recommended a month ago that the bond payments would come out of the city's general fund instead of the Bay Beach account. So basically, the taxpayers would pay that annual bond payment. So that was when it was just the parks being discussed. Once the total bond package was put forward and the mayor looked at the numbers, there was a desire to basically cut the bond request down to what was more typical of what we bond on a yearly basis. So we had a lot of discussions in the last few weeks of what to do with the beach and is there a way to make this successful. So the mayor recommended last week that instead of funding the bond payments out of the general fund, we instead use the Bay Beach fund to pay off the bond payments. So if this is approved, no taxpayer dollars would be needed for this project. The bond payments would be funded strictly and solely from the revenue at Bay Beach. And since the Bay Beach account will be funding the bond payments, there was a desire to now take a look at the scope of work for the project and see if it made sense to add more to the scope of work than what was originally proposed. So what the mayor proposed last week was to make it a $7 million project instead of a $5 million project. And the desire was to bond $5 million, fundraise $1 million, and receive $1 million in grants. So the original $5 million would be for the beach boardwalk pier and bathhouse, and then the additional $2 million would fund parking lot improvements and also begin some of the renovations to the main pavilion. When the initial bond request was brought forward, there was a concern by staff that the bond request was very high, so we did not have the parking lot improvements in there. It wasn't that we didn't feel there was a demand or a need. Now, all of you who have been out there on busy days, you know parking is a premium out there, there's a shortage. We do feel that the beach is gonna be, add to that problem. And so now that the Bay Beach revenues are being proposed to fund the bond payments, we do feel as a staff that the revenue can support the additional $2 million bond request to include those other amenities to it. And how this is set up currently and what's being proposed is for the first 5 years, the yearly bond payments would be $150,000. After that, the payments would go up to $500,000 per year until it's paid off. Now, although this seems like a very large payment, as a staff, we don't really have any concerns with this payment option. And one of the main reasons is because there's only 3 payments left on the Zip and Pippin bond. And each of those bond payments equals around $280,000, which makes up about 60% of this bond payment when it becomes a $500,000 bond payment. In 2017, the net revenue at Bay Beach account was $742,000. And that was after the Zip and Pippin bond was paid. So, last year, if you don't include the Zip and Pippin in there, or if you include the Zip and Pippin bond payment as the revenue, it was over $1 million that we brought in there. So we feel that, we can support a $500,000 payment and still make this project move ahead and still continue with additional development while this bond is being paid off. So, in addition, this year, we are adding additional revenue out at Bay Beach. So we have the new West End train ride that's being proposed and being built, and then there's a new concession stand that's under construction. Both of those will bring additional revenue to the park above and beyond the $742,000 that we made last year. And then next year, we'll have the wheel, which will be completed in early May. So that'll bring in additional revenue. If the beach gets approved, we're anticipating, and I think what we proposed last time is we expect that would bring in about $60,000 in revenue to Bay Beach just because of the increase in crowd. So we do feel that we can support that bond payment. That being said, the proposal was reviewed with the Friends of Bay Beach, and now that the terms have changed and the proposal is to use the Bay Beach account, this agreement that you have in front of you needs to be amended, which would allow us to do that. So we did speak to the Friends group. There is somebody here who can answer your questions, but they are in favor of this proposal, and they have agreed to modify the original agreement for the donation of the Ferris wheel, which will allow the Bay Beach account to fund the construction of everything that I just mentioned to you. And then the changes for the most part is just removing the contingencies that were originally placed in there and restating it. So I guess that's my summary on the project and the funding and how we're going to pay for it. And if you have specific questions on the agreement, I can go over the specific line items.
Sure.
Or you can open the floor.
Before we open the floor, let me just add a couple of things to what Dan said. There was some discussion about it, and the revenues that are projected are assuming that the ticket price will remain as it is. So we're not basing this on an increase in the fares for the rides at Bay Beach. And the second thing I would add is that the parking lot and some of the other improvements that are being talked about here were in the original master plan, but just in a later phase. So we're doing them now because it makes sense to do it. I think with the big wheel going in, especially, and then the boardwalk and beach improvements after that, I think there's just going to be a tremendous demand on the warm summer days out there, and that's when we want to capitalize on our revenues. So, it's not that we're proposing something that wasn't in the plan. It was always in the plan. It's just that we're getting it done now. So.
The other thing I do want to point out is all that we're doing tonight is approving the amendments to this agreement. We're not actually approving the funding for the project. That was brought before the Finance Committee, and they made a recommendation to the full City Council, which will be discussed next week. So all we're doing is approving the amendments.
So moved.
So, I think there are people here who would like to speak on it. Can we open the floor?
Motion to open up floor for
Motion by Alderman Nicholson,
parties.
second by Alderman Weary to open the floor to hear from interested parties. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Al, would you like to come forward? Give us your thoughts on it?
Sure. My name is Alan, A-L-L-A-N. Last name is Hamir, J-A-M-I-R. I reside at 1002 Trailwood Drive, De Pere. And I am a member of Friends of Bay Beach. Thank you for letting me come and speak. And yes, we did have a discussion last week, and we're in favor of things that can promote family fun, safe family fun for the residents of Green Bay, residents of Brown County, and pretty much the state. Because we know during the summertime, from the Preble Optimist Club, when we have the Zip and Pippin Day, where we're actually sponsoring free rides on the Zip and Pippin from 10 a.m. till noon. Well, there are people that come in from Germantown and Milwaukee, Port Washington, from Osseo, from Wausau, because they know that this is a great place to have, to be for family fun. Specifically on the parking lot, yes, I remember last year I was one of the parking attendants, and I was a little concerned, when families were parking on the street. And I'm thinking, that's not really a good thing. So having the parking lot would be safe, right? And of course, as Chairman Enning had said, the parking lot has always been in that 20-year plan. It's just that now it just makes sense to move it up front. Originally, when we talked about the beach, boy, does that make sense, because right now we don't have enough parking spaces, parking lots. We don't have enough bathrooms. We don't have enough bathhouses. We don't have the boardwalk. But now that things are beginning to come together, and if we do this, now we're not impacting the taxpayers, because we're going to use revenues from Bay Beach. And to us, that made a little bit of sense. There's that partnership. So again, yes, we're Friends of Bay Beach. It was unanimous to move forward. But again, understand that we're biased because we want to make and we want to protect Bay Beach. We had a plan to take the 20-year plan and condense it down to 7. And based on results, we've been able to do that. History being a good predictor of the future, I think we can continue to do that. So again, from Friends of Bay Beach, you have our support regarding this amendment.
Okay, sounds like a nice cooperative agreement.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
How is the wheel coming along?
It is in process. Last I heard, it's going to be about 45 semi-truckloads to bring it in. Now, it's not all going to be at one time. Well, that'd be kind of cool to just follow that, right? But it'll start coming in, and by next May, we're going to be up and running. And I think, do you know when the first truckload is coming in?
I don't.
Just about maybe this time next year,
Okay.
when they'll start the assembly. And I would think that from the marketing plan, we want to have some exposure to just generate that interest, from the general public, because it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And now they know that the boardwalk's coming, they know that the beach is coming. It is an exciting time for Bay Beach, for Green Bay residents and the community. So I applaud our efforts to come together to find a responsible resolution of this.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Al. Any questions?
No, I was just going to echo your comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your efforts and the Friends' efforts are immensely appreciated. I mean, donors are always, it makes the Parks Department run here. And I'm glad we could come to this agreement to use the funds from Bay Beach and not have to go to the general public for it, because that's a big deal. So
Yeah.
glad we could come to an agreement.
We thought so too.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak on it? Come on forward.
Janet Angus, 1303 Shirley Street in Green Bay. I received a couple of phone calls yesterday after the Finance Committee meeting from individuals who want to remain anonymous, who are very concerned about the water quality at Bay Beach for swimming and for implementing the $7 million project for swimming at the beach. There was a study that was done that I was not aware of. This case study came out in February regarding the water quality and regarding the structure of the bay on the south end of the bay. And I really think as a committee, you need to look at the feasibility of actually having people swim at Bay Beach. Did any of you read this?
Yeah, I think we received that at our last meeting, the meeting before.
A month ago.
Yeah.
Right, well, I just read it yesterday.
Yeah.
And I contacted a couple of the scientists today. And as far as the beach project goes, possibly the boardwalk, you might want to, before you spend $7 million of taxpayer money, you might want to make sure that that water quality is going to be good enough to swim in. Part of this project says Dr. Todd Miller's lab at UWM's results showed a presence of 4,000 micrograms per liter of cyanotoxins, which is above the Environmental Protection Agency draft recreational guideline of a value of 4 milligrams per liter. 4, not 4,000, 4. And the World Health Organization's drinking water guidelines, which is 1. The study hasn't been completed yet. It's not going to be completed for a year. If you guys spend $7 million on putting in a beach, if it's not usable, and a boardwalk, I guess a boardwalk would be usable. And I'm not against Bay Beach. I just think you have to think this through. And it seems like you're pushing it through fairly quickly. I think you just said you want a safe beach. Some of the other areas that these people who I spoke with, things they were concerned about was the water stagnation is a problem, along with the toxins in the water. The solution to pollution is dilution. Lake Michigan is very diluted, but mixing does not occur in the Green Bay, in the Bay of Green Bay. Green Bay, especially the south end, is very shallow, and so there's not a lot of mixing. Also, Renard Island is right there, and it's all made up of PCBs. What are the health implications? Do you want your children, grandchildren, and do you want to swim in that water? We just went over the water sampling. And then what are the projections for the water sampling costs that are going to be for the city? Are the Friends of Bay Beach going to incur those costs? Because you're going to need, according to the scientists, you are going to need somebody to go out and sample the water numerous times every day. My belief, not sure about that, but that's my understanding. You're going to have to someone analyze those samples within a certain period of time to make sure that these blooms and the water's safe. You're going to have a scientist monitor those things. You're going to have to put up signs to close the beach, and you're going to have police or somebody to regulate people not going into the water if the water's not safe. This is a public health issue. I think that the costs have to be analyzed before you jump into this, and you have to make sure there's proper monitoring. Also, you're going to have to guarantee public health and safety for water quality. If you can't do that, how do you justify spending all this money? $7 million, it started out at 5, and then it went to 3, then it went to 5, and now it's up to 7. And all this happened since February. And then I guess there were a lot of public comments that were referred to online. Has anybody looked at those public comments regarding the water quality?
We're online.
I don't know. I haven't figured that out. There were supposed to be public comments online. The administration, maybe Ms. Jeffries can answer that. there were supposed to be public comments that were supposed to go through online regarding the water quality issues. And I think it's something you've really got to look at. I mean, if it's not safe for dogs and little kids to drink the water, and the statement was made to me, it's not a question of if someone's going to get sick from the water, it's a question of when. And it really has to do with the south part of the bay. The bay apparently is very shallow. The water, polluted water, comes in from the Fox River. It dumps into the bay area, and there's no mixing. And you know, we as a community, I think, are very, very lucky our water source comes from Lake Michigan. And the history lesson there is, a lot of debate went into putting in that water pipeline, or whatever is used, out to Lake Michigan. And there was a lot of contentious debate at the council meetings. Thank goodness we get our water from Lake Michigan. What if we got our water from the Fox River or the Bay of Green Bay? We have a wonderful water department. My understanding is we've got some of the best water quality in the state of Wisconsin, and our water department should be commended for the wonderful water quality we have. But the water doesn't come from the Bay of Green Bay, it comes from Lake Michigan, my understanding.
Okay, thank
My
you.
other understanding is you can't really swim in the Bay of Green Bay until you get up past Dykesville, because there's, on a regular basis, because there's just not a lot of mixing of the water. So, here's the study. Need a copy of it? Did you read the study?
I think we've all gotten that, haven't we?
Studies new water. It says focuses on toxins near Bay Beach. It's done by the joint study of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee Zyber School of Public Health. So,
Thank you, Janet. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the committee on this?
oh, one more thing.
Okay.
I went out today and I got some water at Bay Beach. Here's your water. Bought some cups if you want to try some for water quality. Anybody interested? Are you sure?
Not right now. Maybe
When
later.
they tell you that you can't swallow it and children can't swallow it, you've got to think about it. You have to think about the cost factors. And if they force you to you build a nice beach, you build a nice boardwalk, then they come in and say, oh, we have to put in a filtration area because the water's not safe enough to swim in. Now that's more money for the city to, or the Friends of Bay Beach. Maybe they can raise $5 or $6 million for a filtration plant. So maybe you need to do baby steps instead of big steps, and consider waiting until the water quality reports come out.
Okay, thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Motion to close the floor?
Motion to return to
Return to
regular order of
business. Motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Wery to return to the regular order of business. When we discussed this at the last meeting, we did have our engineer from Patrick Engineering that we had hired. We did have him present here at the meeting, and we did talk about the water quality issues, and the conclusion from the engineering consultant that we hired was that although there are pollutants in the bay, that it's no worse than other Great Lakes beaches, and that there is a recognition that especially the algae blooms will create a need to close the beach on particular days, and will also create a need for regular monitoring. The discussion was that the cost of that monitoring can be covered by our Bay Beach accounts. So we did discuss that at our meeting, I don't know, a month or so ago. Are there other things that anybody wanted to add on it?
We'd like to discuss a few things.
Well, we're just gonna, the amendments, right, Dan? That's
Right.
all it is, correct?
It's amending
Right. So,
the,
Mr. Chairman, if we're gonna discuss it,
right.
it should be on the amendments only, correct?
that's true.
Okay, just want to reinforce that.
And, there's the discussion later on about the bonding and all that, that'll be
That's later.
at council coming out of the
Right.
finance committee.
Okay.
So, okay. Any discussion on the amendments that are proposed? Okay,
Do you have anything, John?
John?
Yeah, he-
On the financial part of the amendments, we're talking here? Can I address that, or do you want to get into
Well,
that?
there are some financial considerations
On
in
the-
the amendments.
On the bonding part of it, they talked about, is it the first 5 years, they're only gonna pay interest only? Is that what they're doing?
It says, not necessarily interest only, it says 150,000 a year. I guess I don't know the breakdown of how much of that is interest and how much.
At $150,000, if you borrow $5 million,
Mhm.
it's about, at a 3% rate, if the city can get that good of a rate, that would be $150,000. So basically, the first 5 years, they'd only want to pay interest only. And after that, they pay $500,000 a year, is that correct?
Correct, yes. Until it's
Seems like
paid
a
off.
it seems like a heavy load as far as finance-wise, that they're putting it out. In other words, the first, so they'll still owe the full 5 million basically after the first 5 years. So we'll be paying, in 5 years period, we'll pay 5 times 150,000. We'll be paying interest only, so we won't make any payment on principal only. I have a problem with the financial part of it. Bonding, it's still city bonding. Any way you cut it, it's city bonding. The city of Green Bay would be responsible for it. And that's the issue I have, that we're putting a lot of money out on interest. There are 5 years of interest only, no principal payoff. And that's a heavy load. If you figure, if that's close to $1 million, or not $1 million, if somebody could add that up quick, it'd be 150,000 times 5. So we're looking at about 700,000 right around there that we'd be just handing over to the bank on interest only at 5-year period. I don't think that's the wisest proposal financial-wise, personally. I think it's a lot of money that we're handing on interest only. I look at the bonding part of it. I think the city of Green Bay has enough already bonded out, and Bay Beach is profitable. I think it's a big burden on the Bay Beach overall. When they get into after they do the 5 years of interest only, and then it's 500,000. And how many years would that 500,000 continue?
I believe it'll be around 12 or 13 years is what I was told.
So we're borrowing 5 million. Is that correct? Is that the amount?
Correct, yes.
So that's a heavy load as far as payment and interest. I have a problem with that part of it.
And, as I mentioned to you, during my presentation, the Bay Beach account can support that based on the revenue that we generate from concessions and rides. So it's something that we feel we can easily accomplish with the money that we're making at that facility, so.
I think personally that it still straps the organization as far as the city and Bay Beach as well. I think it straps them pretty heavy on the financial part. It's not a sound financial investment. That's my thoughts.
Well, it's certainly advantageous to pay off the bonds as quickly as we can, but, it's really not our responsibility to structure the debt repayment. That's really something for finance, but Alderman Nicholson.
Are we talking about the amendments, or are we
Yes.
talking about bonding?
Well, there are provisions, if you read the
I
yellow
read
parts
it, but
here,
I just wanted to have
that
it.
deal with it, so
Okay,
it's
we're
in-
talking about bonding then.
It's in here that
All right.
the amount that will be applied each year from the Bay Beach account
Okay.
to pay off the debt. So
Okay.
it's in here as an amendment if you look at that page, so. Any other discussion? Alderman Weir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the amendments and the funding, I guess I don't have quite as much of a concern, mainly because it is paid for solely from the revenues from Bay Beach. And the quicker we get these amenities in, the quicker we're gonna see the return. Everything we've done out there, we've seen a boost in attendance and a boost in how much money we made. Of the 7 million, and I understand why we added 2 million, it was to get the parking done, because if there's one complaint we've had, it's the parking, over and over and over and over. I mean, I think as aldermen that we hear that. We have to resolve that parking situation. So at some point, we have to pay for that 2 million, whether the city bonds for it ourselves or use the revenues from the beach to pay for it. So I understand why we're including that. 3 million of it, I think, is what the gentleman who was here for the project, or,
Dave Charles?
no, our consultant.
Yeah.
I believe he said 3 million is for the pier, I believe.
Correct, that was the number he threw out.
So out of the 7 million, 2 is the parking and improvements to the renovations to the main bathhouse. 3 million was for the pier, which I haven't heard anybody have an issue with, the 400-foot pier for viewing or sitting out or, whatever you want to do. And then 2 million is for the beach. And that's the part where we did have some discussion about perhaps holding off and waiting till the study came back from whatever university it was in Milwaukee, if it was UWM or which one it was. I'm going to be looking into this more over the next couple days. I have some feelers out already, because Monday's when we're going to discuss actually the money part of this. So I'm fine with how we have it drafted. I need to put my mind at ease a little bit on the beach portion, but I'm fine with the boardwalk, going out in the parking lots. I'm glad it's being funded by the beach, so most of it perfectly fine with. I want to learn a little bit more about the beach portion, because, we don't want to build something that we're iffy on. We got a lot of information on both sides. DNR sounds like it's fine with it, but there's another study, so we're kind of... So I'm going to vote to move this ahead, but Monday's kind of the full council is going to have to decide what we want.
Yeah. When we talked about this initially, there were a lot of parts to this project. There was a retaining wall, there were walkways, including stairwells, as well as a handicapped accessible connection to the water. There was a natural area, there was the pier. So there was a lot to this. It wasn't just putting in sand for the beach. So, is that a motion to proceed with the amendments as proposed? Amendments to the agreement as proposed?
So moved.
Okay. Moved by Alderman Weary. I'll second it, I guess, to proceed with the amendments to the agreement.
Under discussion.
Pardon?
Under discussion.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could, Dan, if you could reach out again and get some more information about the water quality and our timeline for putting in that beach, because I think that is the main concern. I mean, a lot of people I talk to campaigning now, they just want to go to sit in the sand and sit on the beach. They don't even want to swim. So I don't know, but some people obviously are going to want to swim, so.
And I guess I could touch a little bit on that now. So basically...
You want to sit in the beach? Oh.
As mentioned, it's going to come down to regular monitoring and testing, just like every other beach in Wisconsin. We are going to get algae blooms that come in. It is going to happen. We are going to have to close the beach for E. coli occasionally. These are similar problems that a lot of other beaches have. So really the key with it, though, is to do regular monitoring, which we have the money in our budget to do that, and we have staff that can do that. And also then coming up and developing a plan for enforcement and notification to the public. So that is a big concern that the DNR has with granting the permits for this. And we are working very closely with them to put together a plan so that when the beach does need to be closed, we're safely doing it. And we're doing it as best as we can. So we have had a lot of discussions with the DNR on this, and we are going to continue to have those discussions as we move forward. So,
yeah, we haven't heard from the DNR yet, so we're not sure exactly what action we're going to take. But I would expect there would be conditions on any approval that they make. Okay. Anything else?
I just want to make one quick comment.
Yes, John.
I think that, the timeline that we kind of drew this together seemed like it was awful rapid as far as the information that we've gotten. At the last meeting, we talked about 3 million, and it went to 5. I understand what they're doing and all that, but I don't think it would hurt anything to have the study back. And, it seems like we're really, going on a fast track. And I think the study would be very helpful. And, that's my thought, and there's no real rush to, you know, evidently they want to get it done real quick here. And I guess that's, you know, I'd like to see all the facts come in and maybe talk more about the finances as well. We didn't really get a figure on how much it would cost on the bond. And I know they're talking, you know, 3% or a little more. You know, our bonding, if we look at our bonding for the city overall, we're very close to, you know, our limit. So I guess that's kind of my concern about, you know, the bonding, and the city, it's still city money that's being bonded. And I understand that, you know, it gets paid back from the revenue that they collect at Bay Beach, I understand that. But that's my concern,
Okay.
about the actual
I-
cost. And
I think
why-
our previous action on this was that it'd be contingent upon the fundraising and the securing $1 million of grants as well.
Sure, that would be part of the funding mechanism.
So that takes time as well, so it's not like it's going to happen next week.
But if we bond for the 5 million, you'd start using that 5 million right away, is that correct?
Not right away, we still have to complete the engineering for it. The parking lot hasn't been designed at all, we don't have a consultant on board for that. So additional engineering needs to be done, but what the bonding does, if it gets approved, is it shows that the city council and the park committee is supportive of the project. And it really makes fundraising and applying for grants and receiving grants a lot easier. If there is no commitment from the city, then it's much harder to get those, especially on the grant end of things. Without a commitment from the city, the odds of you getting a grant is very slim, or your odds are reduced quite a bit. So,
Yeah, and on a lot of the work that's necessary here, building the boardwalk, the pier, and so on, those are all public works projects that would have to be spec'd and bid out. So, you know, there's a lot of work that has to be done. This isn't...
we would see construction for some of it, maybe not all of it, but as much as we could, you know, to be in 2019. So maybe start in the spring of 19 with some of it. So that is the game plan. But without the funding in place, we can't move that ahead. And we can't secure grants and
Okay.
donations.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, well, we have a motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Alderman Vanderleest, we recorded as being opposed. Okay. Sure, we'll have a discussion on this at council next week as well. Okay. Director's report. Yeah?
Sure, I just have a few items here. So park crews have begun our spring cleanup in the parks, getting it ready for the nice weather that's coming. Forestry crews are working on removing infested ash trees and pruning along Alvina Street, Minor Court, and San Jose Place. Recreation staff is currently interviewing and hiring staff for summer positions for playground leaders, softball site supervisors, softball officials, and pool staff. We did host a job fair at Bay Beach on Saturday, March 24th, to recruit for pool and Bay Beach positions, and that was a pretty successful event. And then over at Bay Beach, we did start our staff orientation out there, getting ready for the opening in May. And then over at the sanctuary, we did have a successful bald eagle release, which was held in honor of Billy Kress and the Kress family for their support at the wildlife sanctuary. So that was a nice event, and it turned out well. So that concludes my director's report.
Okay, any questions or discussion?
Motion to receive and place in file?
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Weary, seconded by Alderman Vanderleest to receive and place on file the director's report. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. A motion by Alderman Weary, seconded by Alderman Vanderleest to adjourn the park committee. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we stand adjourned.